It's story time. Married to a Djinn, submitted by Zaynab. This happened to my friend 6 months ago. I would just like to add really quickly that I have her permission to send this. Her name is Jasmine, and she has 2 older brothers. She comes from a Muslim family, and we have been friends since we were toddlers. We loved talking about jinns in elementary school and how spooky we'd think it would be to meet one. Growing up, I got closer to Islam than she did, but it didn't stop our friendship the slightest. I started wearing the hijab while she would dress in revealing clothes and had tattoos all over her arms and legs, which made me feel uneasy, but nonetheless, my parents ended up allowing me to keep hanging out with her. One day, she invited me over for a sleepover, and my parents dropped me off there saying they'd pick me up on Monday afternoon. They had dropped me off on a Friday evening. When we sat down in her room after dinner, she mentioned that she missed when we always spoke about jinns. So I suggested we arrange the room into a small blanket castle to talk about them. When I was trying to set up, I saw her spray perfume all over her and her room. "You know perfume is one of the things that attract jinns, right?" I said, chuckling at our actions, but still warning her of it. "Don't worry, Zaynab, jinns can't get to us so easily," she laughed my warning off. I just shrugged internally. We went to bed that night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. But I decided to sleep since Jasmine was already snoring. It was around 5 a.m. that Jasmine woke me up, angry, asking why I smeared henna all over her blanket and arm. I was confused since I didn't bring henna with me. She looked through my things and thought it might actually be one of her brothers. While she ran to her mother's room to tell her, I couldn't shake the feeling something seemed off. That's when I realized. I ran to her blanket and saw that it wasn't just a random smear. It was written Allah in Arabic. Everything started to make sense. Last night, she attracted a Djinn with all the perfume she put in her room, and the Djinn ended up marrying her. I didn't understand since she didn't show signs of being attacked by one, so I ran to her as fast as I could. Jinns that marry themselves to you are known to bring extreme bad luck to those targeted, such as wedding cancellations, breakups, death of a loved one, loss of a friend, etc. Once I arrived in her parents' room, her scolding mother, siblings, father, and herself were staring at me in confusion. I explained to them the best I could what was happening to her, but they got mad and just kicked me out. My parents picked me up, babbling about how I should have never begged to stay friends with her. Loss of a friend. A few months passed and I got news from her eldest brother. "Hey Zaynab, something happened to Jasmine's boyfriend, and we think it has to do with what you told us." I went to their home, and Jasmine was in absolute tears. She kept saying that it had nothing to do with what I said, but it seems like she was trying to convince herself more than anything. Her mother walked me to the kitchen and told me what was happening. Her boyfriend was on his way here yesterday for dinner. He hit his car in a tree and he died. Death of a loved one. I froze. I genuinely felt bad for her at this moment. I went to talk with her about it, and she was willing to go to an imam to get rid of it. During the process, I was in the room with her, holding her hand so she could stay calm and feel safe. The ceremony was done, and she felt much better. She's still recovering from the loss, and her luck is slowly building back up. From the information I collected from the imam who cleansed her, people targeted can eventually drive themselves to suicide. She's very lucky to be freed from the curse. She invited me to her boyfriend's funeral, which I accepted with gratitude. Her boyfriend was buried, and many were crying. As everyone was leaving, they offered that I stay the night with them, and I agreed. Just as I was walking to their car, I saw it. What had ruined my friend's life. It was a long, tall figure, and you couldn't distinguish where the head was. It looked like it was wearing a long dress since we couldn't see its feet. It was staring at me. It was angry. But I felt great. Jinns are very afraid of the Quran and those who recite it or share it. If this thing comes by again, it knows what's waiting for it. Thank you for sharing this with me, Zaynab. So for those of you unfamiliar with jinns, they are a type of entity in Islam. If humans were made from clay and earth, jinns were made from smokeless fire. They have free will, they fall in love. They're neither all malicious or all benevolent, just like humans. And that's what makes them such tricky spirits. They can upend your life entirely, and you may not even know it. Jasmine is lucky to have a friend like you, Zaynab. Thanks for joining me today. And did you know that I offer bone and tarot readings? You can schedule a session at StoriesWithSapphire.com. Salamat and good night.